Hello guys, and welcome to another edition of Rage Against the Dice. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for an RPG review. This week brings us the first of the source books for Judge Dredd and the World of 2000 AD, Strontium Dog, as you can see on the screen. Strontium Dog is another comic strip featured in the 2000 AD magazines that actually started out in the short-lived sci-fi comic Star-Lord, way back in 1978, the year before I was born. The series has been long running up until the artist Carlos Esquerra passed away in 2018, when it was sadly put into indefinite hiatus. The main premise of Strontium Dog was following the Great Nuclear War of 2150, which wiped out 70% of Britain's population. The number of mutant births were increased. Mutants were seen as a second-class or even third-class citizen. Kept in ghettos and, kind of given the dredges of society's jobs. One of the only jobs that was available was the incredibly dangerous bounty hunting for the Search and Destroy Agency. Agents were nicknamed Strontium Dogs because mutants were seen as mongrels or dogs, caused by the fallout of Strontium-90, the radioactive material that was used in the war. The series had a bleak, minimalistic edge, somewhat akin to spaghetti westerns. It involved time travel to arrest the likes of Hitler, the death of the main character. Some see that as being one of the biggest mistakes that they did. There were subsequent spin-offs with other Strontium Dogs before finally returning to Johnny Alpha's exploits before his death. I always loved the artwork of the Strontium Dog comics. Esquerra's artwork style was stunning, especially in such a kind of limited size panel as a comic pane. Some of the storylines weren't exactly my favourites, but they certainly weren't my least favourites in 2000 AD either. So, nothing to worry about there. It had some good stories. It was a good comic book to read. Or just look at the pretty pictures, as I used to do. So, step into the doghouse, polish your badge, hold on tight, go in. As it's a source book, you need the Judge Dredd and the World of 2000 AD core rule book to play. And if you haven't got it yet, why not? The game uses the same system, unsurprisingly, as the core rule book. What's old is new, or worn. If you've not watched the previous review, go watch it now, because I cover the Warring system in that. It seems redundant to repeat it when I'm covering a source book for a core book, so I'm not going to do it. Like I said, if you haven't watched the review, go watch it now. I'll wait, it's fine. Okay, so if you're hearing this, you've either just watched my other review or you saw it before. So let's continue. The book's not the largest. It comes in at 173 pages across 6 chapters. There's an index, 2-page character sheet. That's not necessarily a bad thing though from a source book. You don't want it to be too much or too kind of thick, because that's a bit of a put off when it comes to a source book, and it also makes a game line incredibly expensive to buy as well. If you've got to fork out, 40, 50 quid for the core book and then 40 quid each expansion, it becomes a very, very expensive thing, especially when you end up buying lots and lots of shiny math rocks. But, this came in at like 15 quid in PDF, 30 quid as a hardback book, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Kev will link it or something. He does all the technical wizardry, I just do the recordings. I'm the talent, so to speak. Again, as you can see, we're not hyperlinked on the contents page. That's a bugbear of mine. It slows down gameplay because you've got to flick through screens and wait for loading, and that's just irritating. For me anyway. Your mind may vary. If you don't mind that it's not hyperlinked, please leave comments, let me know, give me feedback. like I said, for me, I prefer hyperlinked because I just find it easier. We have a single page forward here from Darren W. Pierce, the writer of this book. He goes in and says about, well, basically everything I've covered. Carlos Esguerra, the Strontium dog, how it changed. It also gives you a very, very quick overview of what the book's about, what you can expect from it. And ends with a teasing possibility of going after the likes of Badri Stoughton and Nagla Fromage in history. I don't know who Nagla Fromage could be. Do you know what's on the tip of my tongue? I just can't think. But whatever. We're going to move on to chapter 1 in a second. I'm going to take a short break, drive myself 264 miles to go and get some exercise, and then I'll be back. Okay? Take care, wash your hands, stay safe. And I'm back. It was quite a nice bit of exercise there. Went to a park. It was fun. Socially distanced, obviously, when I got there, because, you know, that's what you've got to do. Chapter 1 covers 36 pages. It's the joint second largest of the chapters, beaten only by the NPC section, which is a massive section compared to the others. And this is Dog Eat Dog World. It covers basic background of the SD agents and creating your character. The page reference table here on page 8 is pretty much one of my only main complaints about the book. It's a bit of a letdown, I'll be honest. The formatting is not quite right, so some of the numbers, as you can see, are kind of higgledy-piggledy on the screen in the table, and also they're wrong. Creating an SD character apparently is on page 8. As we can see, because we're on page 8, there's nothing here about creating a Strontium dog character for search and stuff. It's actually on page 9. So the numbers are wrong, and I'll be honest, that gives me a bit of a flashback to the previous Judge Dredd role-playing game experience that I had with a company that will, well, I'm going to name them Mongoose. Mongoose sucked. Their tables did that. They were all over the place. They were not referenced correctly if they'd actually bothered to go back and put in page numbers. At least they've put in page numbers here. They're out by 1. When creating a character, you follow the standard method from the core rules, those 9 steps. But this book is used to replace steps 2, 4, and 9. That's species, careers, and equipment. You can play as one of the timid little gronks in the game, who are cute and adorable. Howlers, which are the baboon-like aliens. A basic human, a mutant, a robot, or one of the almost identical mutant sticks. My initial thoughts about playing a Strontium dog game, I was torn between the adorable little gronk or the typical mutants the setting's most famous for. Mutants are incredibly varied, and it's highly unlikely, due to the way you create your mutation, that you'll have 2 characters within a campaign that are going to be the same because of how you randomly select your mutant superpowers. Unlike Steve, for example, who, bless him, has a 3rd eye on his elbow. It's not really a superpower, is it, Steve? No matter how much you try to tell us otherwise. You first roll to see how your superpower manifests, be it corporeal, metabolic, metaphysical, or cosmetic. So it's a D3 table, essentially. You then roll on the relevant D66 table to find out what it could be. So corporeal, you could end up with tentacles, like Liam. For your metas, you could end up with psychic powers or radioactive emissions. and cosmetic mutations, you could end up with a mini you attached somewhere on your body, or the fantastically colourful but in no way stealthy disco skin. And that's just to name a few. As I said, it's D66 tables, and there are 3 of them. So you've got quite a variety. 3 lots of 36, which is 90, 102, 108 different mutation possibilities that you could have. So, you know, it's highly unlikely in a campaign that you're going to have people with the same mutant powers twice. It's possible, but highly unlikely. Your career selections vary from, depending if you're playing as a civilian or outlaw or as an SD agent. I'll be honest here, I find a lot of these careers to be a bit pointless. You're playing the game, you're playing Strontium Dog, you're going to want to be a search destroy agent, you're going to be one of the Strontium Dogs, you're not going to want to be a generic mutant outlaw. I mean, okay, fair enough. It might be a thing, you might want to do that, but probably you're going to want to be an SD agent, which means you're going to ignore so much of this to just go straight to the SD agent recruitment and careers section. It's always good to have options. Like I said, you can be a time agent, you can be a dimensional agent, or even a standard search destroy agent without having to worry about any wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff or deadly dimension hopping shenaniganry. You see, we've got some Judge Dredd artwork to tie it back in a little bit as well. The artwork that you can see, it's very in keeping with Esquerra's style. Not overdoing it too much. There's still quite a lot of information that we do need to get into this relatively small page count. Chapter 2 starts 43 pages into the book and details the unique equipment to the doghouse in the world of Strontium Dog. As well as this stuff from the core rulebook, we get the addition of the phenomenal Las Whips, Las Staffs, and Electro Nooks. Yep, electrified brass knuckles. Those are the melee editions, as well as the Happy Stick, which is a Warhammer, if you're not familiar with it. And we also get a wide variety of non-judge specific from the core book ranged weapons, as well as blasters, cracklers, stormers, and of course a napalm pistol, because why would you not want to set fire to absolutely everything in the world? We get a decent selection of explosives and devices here, so bombs, devices, and grenades, beam polarizer, blackout grenades, dimension warp, pocket nukes, because, you know, why not? Thermal bombs, time draugrs, and a variety of gear, such as an anti-grav chute, life wire, handcuffs, if that's your bag. You're bounty hunting after all, you're going to need a way to bring them in alive, if that's what the bounty calls for. Wrist comms, vid slugging cameras, you know, a huge range of stuff. Well, not huge, a decent range of stuff. Armor and shields, and of course the grav bike, grav skimmer, grav car that you'd see in Strontium Dog. These are generic bikes rather than your wheeled Judge Dredd Lawmasters. You know, why would you not want to be able to ride a grav bike flying blind on a rocket cycle, for example? You know, it's a decent section. It's 13 pages long of equipment. There's quite a lot of information. We've got tables, just a few small pictures scattered through as well in the Strontium Dog comic style. So it's, all in all, it is a good chapter. It's pretty well put together. That's going to take us on to chapter 3. I'm going to give us a little break again. I need a drink. My throat's getting dry. Probably is all that driving that I did. I'll be back shortly. Welcome back, guys. I hope you've washed your hands. Stay safe. Remain indoors. All that stuff. Unless you don't want to. Apparently that's the rules now. So, chapter 3 gives us 14 pages of how to set the tone of Strontium Dog. It is geared towards the GM, but actually there's parts of it you're probably going to want to share with your players so that they're prepared. Mutants, as I said at the beginning, are second if not third class citizens. They're going to be treated with loathing, fear and revulsion. You know, for example, the players need to understand that they're going to get called stinking stronts, getting told to go back where they come from, called muties, those sort of things. I've played in other games where that's been part of the setting, or similar has been part of the setting. So, for example, these Star Wars role-playing games, if they're set during the time of the Empire was horrifically fascist and racist. If you weren't human, you were a second-class citizen, according to the Empire. So, if you're part of the rebellion, which, you know, why would you not be? Because that's how the game is geared. And you're going into Imperial worlds, and you are playing as a non-human character, then there are parts of it that you're going to be excluded from. You're going to be treated as a second-class citizen, and some players really struggled with that aspect. So then it was on me as a GM to have to adapt the story and keep us away from those sort of situations as best we can. But that takes away a lot of what exactly it was that made the Empire so evil in that game. So in this, you know, you need to make sure your players are aware up front so that they're not going to kind of struggle with that concept. It tells us where we can draw inspiration from, obviously the comics. There's Firefly, Killjoys, both excellent series. If you've not watched them, give them a try. Firefly was cut off far too early and then given a horrific movie, which I'm not going to talk about, it's still too raw. It's a spaghetti western type setting, really, that in Strontium Dog. It draws heavily on the tropes and ideas and concepts of spaghetti western. So spaghetti westerns are a great way to get the feel and tone of how the setting should be. And there's a great sample on page 58 here. It's just a little bit of kind of in-game flavour text that really does set that tone incredibly well. Some beautiful artwork, taking up some big pieces here. Great bits on travel, time and dimensions in the Space Wild West, places to go, and the best bit of these tables here. So it's Thrill of the Hunt. You are a bounty hunter as an SD agent. It may be difficult as a GM to come up with ideas for bounties. Well, lucky for GMs, we've got these tables. So, generate your names. 2 tables for names, part A and part B. What crime they've committed, so why they're being hunted. What they are, so species, any special bounties that they're responsible for, where they are now and what they're doing. So I had a little bit of a play around with this and came up with a couple of quick bounties. So Et and Tiny, a human wanted for, no, sorry, a synthetic being wanted for selling illegal weapons to aliens, currently playing cards in a gambling den. And Haley and August, human wanted for war crimes, currently in their cabin on a luxury Starliner cruiser. Now, as a GM, what that tells me is these are two very different people. So, Tiny is a synthetic life form, synthetic being. Now, is he Tiny because he's only small in stature? Or is he actually really, really big? So that gives me things to play off. He's synthetic, so how is he synthetic? Is he an artificial intelligence, a hyper-intelligent artificial intelligence, or is he a robot that just wants to be human? He's going to be in a gambling den playing cards. So that tells me that, well, you know, probably he's on a frontier world, in a gambling den there, selling illegal weapons to aliens. How is he getting those weapons? So it's really sparking my creative juices flowing with these questions, getting some details down, so that actually I can put together from that a whole backstory for Tiny. And I did it with like less than 6 rolls of dice. Haley and August, on the other hand, war criminal. So what's he done? I need to answer those questions. Whatever it is, it's been lucrative because he's currently in a cabin on a luxury Starliner cruiser. So is he kind of the equivalent of Nazi gold? Hell, has he gone back in time, stolen Nazi gold? It's a possibility in Strontium Dog. This is the joy of this chapter as a GM. I absolutely love it. And I know I don't normally cover a lot on GMs when we do this because I focus more heavily on the player side of things. But actually, I think with a source book, a lot of source books tend to be geared more towards your GMs, or large chunks of it are geared more towards your GMs. Sorry. So it's well worth mentioning that and giving that a little bit more detail. And actually, if your players are wanting to do kind of the outlaws and avoid being hunted by bounty hunters, then, you know, by all means, let them kind of look at these tables so that they know kind of ideas of what they could have done. Great idea, definitely worth using. Chapter 4 is our kind of, sorry, knocked the microphone. Chapter 4 is our chapter on kind of the world of Johnny Alpha and Strontium Dog. It starts off with the timeline from the comic books. It mentions in the bold italics the stories that the events happening, where they're relevant. So if you wanted to go back and reread them, you can. It's a pretty comprehensive overview, well worth a read. It did bring back a few memories that I'd totally forgotten about. Like I said, I used to read these, like I said in my previous review, sorry. I used to read these when I was a kid. I would steal 2000 AD off my brother and read through it. And I was maybe a little bit young for some of the Strontium Dog stories originally when I first started doing it, which is why possibly they weren't my favourite, because of it being so bleak and things like that. But it's brought back a lot of memories reading through this timeline. It's you know, it's brought back a lot of fondness for me. And actually, I wish I still had, I wish my brother still had them so I could go back and reread them. I might have to look into getting some of the compendiums of stories and stuff, so that I can read them again. We then go on to the Galactic Gazetteer. I can never pronounce it properly. Is it Gazetteer? Yeah, you know what I mean. That word. Part 1 is known worlds and locations. So starting off with Earth, and going across 61 different known locations from the comics. Things like the Doghouse, Kator, Ursa Minor, Paprika, Coriander, Alzia, Kane's Colossal Casino, Mad Garden City, Fargo, Smiley's World and System. You get the idea. We get a brief description, or as much of a description as we can, based on what's known of them from the comics. Not quite sure how they've arranged these, because they're certainly not in any order that I could figure out. They're not alphabetically. But there is, like I said, the brief description of those 61 different locations. As a GM, if you can't find some information here on a system to use for a game, there's something wrong with you. As a player, if you need inspiration for where you come from other than Earth, or where you wanted to kind of have settled or whatever, and then there's information here as well. Then we move on to the galactic, that word that I can't pronounce properly, part 2, which is the EN worlds. So EN space, EN system, it's a star system that sits on the frontier regions of known space, border between war and factions caught in an endless civil war. There's uncontrollable levels of crime. So the ideal place to send the SD department, because, you know, let's make it more dangerous and difficult for them. There's 20 locations here, including Robotopia and Babylon and the Ilk. There's Donna. Some of them have a lot more detail on, others not so much. Like Dobbin-Star is a single paragraph, whereas, you know, Bro is 5 or 6 paragraphs long. So a variety of information there that you can use that will help you in your game as a GM, or you can use them as or read through and pick bits out to use as a primer for your players when they're going into a location. You know, it's kind of like a mini Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy type thing, if you want. It's always worth doing, it's always handy, especially in a sci-fi galaxy-spanning campaign. I'm going to take another break because, as you heard me there, I had to take a drink partway through, and now I need to pee. I will wash my hands, make sure you do. You can put the kettle on or something, make yourself a nice cup of tea, a bit of a break, Kit Kat or other chocolate, wafer biscuit, finger treats are available if you so desire. And I will be back shortly with the next chapter. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed your little tea break there, or coffee, or other hot beverage if you so desired. We're here at chapter 5, which is the sample adventures / bounties section. They let you jump right into the action and get playing once you've made your characters. I'm not going to go through them on the screen because it would be unfair to any GM out there who is thinking of running the game and may want to use these bounties themselves. And it's also unfair, if you're a player, for me to spoil them like that. So, you know, I will look at the first one briefly, just so you can see how it's laid out. So there's the lowdown, which is an overview. Statement claim, which is kind of the information on the bounty itself. We've got white boxes, which are text that you can read out to your players. A bit more information on the bounty itself. The locations of where you're going to be going, etc., etc. How to claim the reward, and what to do next. So we'll quickly skip back to the start of the chapter. I'm impressed with them. I'm not typically a fan of pre-written adventures. I've said this before. I would rather make something myself. That's, for me as a GM, that is what I enjoy the most about making a campaign, is coming up with those storylines myself. I might take inspiration from things. I might kind of read a synopsis of a pre-made story and go, actually, I like that idea or that concept, but this is how I'm going to do it. With these 6 bounties in here, I really like them. They're good as written. It wouldn't be too hard to adapt as I need to. So yeah, like, they've impressed me with these. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do when it comes to pre-written adventures. I think quite often a lot of pre-written adventures just get churned out. These haven't. There's been a lot of thought put into these. So kudos to the writer. Now, I'm going to quickly skip through. Keep on forgetting how many pages there are. Right. Chapter 6 is our final chapter. It's the largest in the book. It's 42 pages long. Covers 44 NPCs of varying flavours. You've got SD agents, rogue agents and bounty hunters, criminals and outlaws, generic outlaws, mutants and gnomes, aliens and robots, the supernatural, and combatants from other eras. So SD agents such as Johnny Alpha, Durham Red, and generic agents as well, should you need them. Rogue agents, we get Cuss and Silent Weird in there. Criminals and outlaws, Billy Joe, Max Bubba, Saddam the Demon Maker. Generic outlaws, just kind of generic ones. Mutants and gnomes are generic NPCs. Again, aliens and robots. There's some in there that you'll recognise from stories, others are just going to be kind of generic ones. And the rest are, generics. So, the same criticisms I had over layout of the Judge Dredd core book NPCs apply here, in that because they're broken down by type, they're not easy to navigate, and with the named ones, they're not actually in alphabetical order either, which makes it even more difficult to navigate from a PDF. They do have page references. These page references, from what I've seen, are accurate, so that's something in its favour. But you are going to have to do a lot of flicking backwards and forwards, searching to find what you need. And if you want Johnny Alpha, you can't just, from the PDF, do search for the word Johnny Alpha, because he's mentioned in this book quite a lot. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to find things. But that said, there's certainly a lot of choice here for any GM needing NPCs to try to kill, encounter their players, or targets of bounties. They're laid out very similar to the Judge Dredd ones. Got all the information you need for them. What I will say, be aware of what you're putting up against your opponents, because players, because your players will have a nasty habit of looting the corpses of anything they come across, especially so in bounty hunting, I would imagine. I know my players certainly would, and you may not want them to have access to, for example, Billy Joe's twin Laswhips, or, well, they were pretty boring really, to be fair. That was just what I happened to start on. But can see as high-powered customized blaster, for example, that might kind of twist the power level again. But yeah, so there's quite a lot of information in here. Very few pictures in it, so make that what you will. You don't get a lot of visual inspiration for NPCs, but I'll cover the artwork in a little bit more detail in a moment. As you can see, a large amount of options here for NPCs. We then get 4 pages of index and a 2-page character sheet to finish off the book. What can I say about those, really? I'm not sure if I like the style of the character sheets personally. That's more of an aesthetic thing myself. Your opinion may differ. You might like it. It's entirely individual thing when it comes to that. What I'm going to do, we're going to take a quick break again. You can have a bit of a rest, a bit of a walk around, stretch your legs. I'm certainly going to do that. Don't think I'm going to drive 264 miles this time though. It's a bit tiring. I'll be back soon. Welcome back, guys. So, all that's left really is for me to do a roundup and overview. It's a really good offering of the source book. Like I said, it's a relatively short page count of 172, 173 pages. But that's certainly not wasted space either. They've made the most of the space they've got. There's not a lot of artwork, as I said. I'm mixed feelings with that. The artwork in books is nice. I would like to see what some of the weapons and equipment looks like. I think that would be useful so that, you know, you can always look at those pictures and point them out to a player so they know what exactly it is they're using and what. So if, for example, they're looking for a particular piece of equipment as part of a bounty, they know what it looks like. That would be handy. I get why they haven't put a lot of artwork in. There's no new artists within 2000 AD who are actually doing the artwork for Strontium Dog anymore, because of Esquire being the artist for it, and with him passing away. I think a lot of it is they don't want to kind of mar his work or kind of ruin what he's worked so hard for so long. So I think it feels a bit word heavy compared to some other source books that I've read out there. We'll be covering some other source books for other game lines as well in these reviews, so you'll see what I mean about the kind of how word heavy this felt in places, especially that NPC chapter. Great having a wide range of NPCs, but it was just so much text. The artwork that is there is very reminiscent of Esquire's work. It's very reminiscent of the comics. It's beautiful. Even when it's gritty and kind of not as detailed, it's still good quality, beautiful artwork that's relevant, rather than just putting in pictures for picture's sake. There's a lot of information in here. Some of it is useful just for GMs, some of it is useful for just players, all of it is useful for Strontium Dog fans. So if you are a fan of Strontium Dog, or you're a completist and you've already bought the core rules, or you're looking for just something a little bit different from what's out there, give it a try. Bounty hunting through time and space, across dimensions, or just across the galaxy in the game's current timeline. Strontium Dog does it all. You can be the bounty hunters, you can be the outlaws trying to avoid capture. You can do what you want with this game, whilst also staying true to Strontium Dog. So it really is a great book. I love it. It's well worth 15 quid as a PDF if you've got the core book. Even if you're not going to play it, that it's going to be useful for other source books that are being released, because there's going to be a lot of crossover from what I've seen, especially kind of the Cursed Lands one for you know, kind of the mutants there and the mutants in here are going to have like a lot of interplay and interaction with the rules, so that's always going to be quite handy. Some of your NPCs you might be able to stick in and throw against some judges or perps. Rogue Strontium dog agents coming through time to find the bounty and interacting with your players. This is your game, this is your world of 2000 AD and Judge Dredd. Make of them what you want. I'm looking forward to playing this. My only decision now to make is, do I want to run it as a GM, or do I want to be in it as a player? Because I'm not going to lie, I want to do both. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Please give us some comments. I always look forward to comments. Kev definitely monitors them all the time because he gets the notifications. I check in on them as often as I can. I try to interact with people, even if it's just giving your comment a like. If you've got any specific questions, I will try my best to answer them. You know, ultimately we do this for you guys, not for us. So if there's anything in particular you want to see me review, please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so that you know when they're released. And check out some of our other videos. In particular, I loved our Mysterium playthrough. That was great. The Paint with Nate, if you are into painting, is phenomenal. Kev's Hobby Diaries, because he really, really loves doing different hobby diaries. We review all sorts of tabletop stuff. There's brush reviews going up at the moment. A whole plethora of things for you to like and enjoy. Subscribe, please, guys. You know, if you can't find something on there, then tell us. Let us know what you want to see. We'll try to accommodate as best we can. So, really, all that's left for me to say is, pray to the dice gods, may they smile upon you. Bye, everybody.